Hi and welcome, Vasanta. After many years, no, let's do it now. Later, we finally come to a place where we are both on screen and able to talk. Before I begin this conversation, which is a series called The Vulnerable Me, would you want to just give a bit of introduction to yourself?
Ah, introductions. Okay, my name is Vasantha. I have been Surinder Singh's friend for 20 years now. You and I have been friends for 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 20 years. And I have had as crazy a journey as Surinder Singh, if that helps the introduction.
Okay. I, uh, she's uh, she's a advertising strategist of sorts, having worked in ad agencies and with uh, companies to help them figure out their marketing strategies and run entire offices and other things. But that is not the reason why she's here. One of the Okay, I'll start on a very personal note. Uh, Vasanta and I go back to a book called Ishmael.
Oh,
When I first spoke to her, she kind of was reading a book and she lent it to me. The book was called Ishmael, and just for the sake of discussion and an interesting beginning, the book is about a guy who reads a classified ad which says, "I know the meaning of life and you don't." And the guy who reads this classified ad is wondering and can't get the ad out of his head. Finally, he goes to that address to check out who's put this ad. And of all the surprises, the person, or rather the being which has put out the ad, is a gorilla. And there starts a conversation which talks about the history of mankind from both a thought and a historical perspective, with bits of sociology thrown in, uh, philosophy, religion, all kinds of things are thrown. It's a very interesting book. If I remember correctly, it's by a author called Daniel Quinn, is it? Uh,
perfect. Yes,
yeah.
it is.
So,
I'm still a Daniel Quinn fan.
yeah. So, Vasanta, on that crazy beginning to this chat, I want to ask you, uh, because this is a bit of nostalgia, that this episode that I just narrated, do we change uh, in terms of values over time? When you look back with nostalgia to who you were when you were growing up, uh,
Mm.
because we try and look at everything through a values prism. So first I'm asking you a
Mm.
values based question, then we'll get into the vulnerability part of it. Do you think we change over time? Are there certain basics that one can relook at some point of time?
I think your values are always changing, and what you start with is absolutely not even close to anything that what you will end with. And rarely I feel that you typically go back. It is a walk forward. It is a fairly challenging journey, but it is a changing journey for sure.
Okay. So in this sense, would you agree that there are certain parts of us that do not change and certain parts that keep evolving all the time? Or is the entire thing a flux according to you?
In my view, our entire thing is a flux. We like to believe that we are unchanging, that we are stable, that we are solid, in certain words, but that's not the truth. We are changing. We are changing every day, and there is no part of us that remains unchanged. It's not a it's not a physical or an emotional probability.
Oh, so a very interesting entry to the vulnerability part here. Since everything is changing so dynamically, and
Hmm.
yeah, with change comes fear for sure. There comes doubt. There
Hmm.
comes uh, Everything that we stand on keeps being in a shaky place. Uh, has there been a time where you, I don't want to talk about almost everydayness, because on an everyday basis, we were talking about this some few minutes back also. There are going to be challenges that we
Hmm.
cannot manage. Uh, but on a bigger uh, note, in terms of
Hmm.
when you look at large chunks of time, has there been a time where you felt very shaky and vulnerable? And what was that like? How did you come out of it?
Um, there have been several times in my life when I have felt very shaky and vulnerable. And I think the consciousness of that change kind of, uh, is difficult to deal with. For example, there was this certain health condition that I had in my life, which kind of rendered me physically fairly incapable. I mean, I could walk, talk, work as in a desk job, but simple household tasks were a challenge. Simple, child rearing tasks were a challenge. My solution to that was to adopt help, and I was raised with a very egalitarian outlook. I was raised with, you will not treat servants like servants, etc., etc. So, and I didn't want my child to believe that there was a class system in the world. So, I literally adopted my help. So, there was this girl who, at that point of time, I didn't know how young she was, and I discovered it much, much later how young she was. But when she came in, she told me she was 18 and she was 5 months pregnant. I think it was about 2.5, almost 3 years later, I discovered that when she came in, she was 12 years and 5 months pregnant. And when she had her baby, she was 13 years old, you know.
Oh my God.
And by the time I figured it out, she was 16 years old, you know. And I mean, we had started on our path. I mean, we were a makeshift, different kind of family. I was amma to three children by then. One was this teenager, and her son and my daughter were also kids together, growing up together. They had schooling together, they had classes together. Um, and I have typically been a fairly blind to the world kind of person, you know. And I think there was about a year or two after that, when she was in, attempting her 10th grade exams, is when I came face to face with societal judgment on the choice I had made, and therefore the family system that I had going. And it was a very scary moment to realize that I had I mean, it was one thing to just put myself into that situation, but I had effectively put four more people into that situation, and we were collectively being judged in a really, truly, badly negative way. Uh, it was lucky for me. By the time I figured out and the whole judgment was coming about, I moved cities. She grew up. She moved out of home because she had finished her 12th grade by then and she wanted to move on to an independent life, etc. But the point is that we worked through that, and it was a harrowing phase. I had anger bouts. She went through actual depression. Rest of the family had huge amounts of stress. We didn't let go of each other, but it was not easy being judged to that extreme level.
Okay. Uh, this is uh, this is news to me. We've been friends for a long time. I did not know this aspect of your life, but I want to bring up a certain question that has never crossed my mind. Since all of you felt vulnerable in
Mm,
different ways during that time, even if the event was one, the
mm,
reactions and the people
yeah.
going through it was absolutely varied from each other. Do you think sharing vulnerabilities is actually a kind of strength? If you come through it, obviously, sometimes relationships break down and stuff like that. Since you guys did not, and
Mm,
you managed to reach a point that you when you broke off, it was at your uh, convenience and your decision that made it happen. So since you went through
Hmm.
it, so would you go back into your mind and of that time and space, in spite of all the troubles, or
Hmm.
was there
Hmm. Hmm.
something positive to going through this together?
I think so. I think yes. The answer is a very simple, straightforward yes. I had learned from my own upbringing and my parents fostering strength constantly that it was just too difficult for a family to go through the kind of posturing that was expected by typical role models. Mothers have to behave X way, fathers have to behave Y way, siblings have to behave, Z way, uncles, aunts have to do X and not Y, and stuff like that. And people, I think, tend to believe that adults actually, the word is adults, not people. Adults tend to believe that children cannot see through that posturing. And that is the biggest lie ever told, because the truth is the child, any child in any home, lives very closely to the parents and the adults in the village that is helping them grow up, and they see everything. They see everything, they feel everything, they understand everything at a level that I think adults in their complicated mind structures don't imagine how the child takes it. So I had learned it from that upbringing that, the best way to do it was be honest, be share whatever it was, what your strengths were, what your weaknesses were, and why you were going to do whatever that you were going to do, and then people will deal. Kids, adults, everybody will deal.
This is quite interesting. I have a teenage kid, and very often we have a lot of, for want of a better term, soulful conversations about life itself. She is growing up.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
am a recent single parent, and we've had a difficult time with my wife's health for many years. One of the things that I did very early, I think, my wife had a condition for around 8 or 9 years, and when she had this condition for
Okay.
around 3 years, at that point itself, I
Hmm.
told my daughter that I think that it is a possibility that we might not win this war, although we are trying all
Hmm.
kinds of things. But there is a
Hmm.
possibility that
Hmm.
this might happen. And,
Ha.
the surprising part was she kind of, yeah, nodded like a very mature person, and she said, "Yes, I know." In
Hmm.
fact, so much so that the last few days of my wife's health were little more critical than usual. It was always critical, but
Hmm.
this was because she was hospitalized, and because it was COVID time, and the doctors were insistent that this was a COVID case where it was not. So I broke down quite often, and she was laughing at me. She said, "This is the first time you have kind of broken down with as far as mom is concerned." And
Hmm.
it was difficult for me to explain to her that the even if it is a goodbye, it needs to be done in person, and you cannot deal with the fact that they take
Hmm.
away and you never get to see her again or something like that.
Hmm.
As recently as 2 3 days back, she tells me, "Oh, before she was hospitalized, I knew that she wasn't coming back, uh, and she was in
Wow.
very bad shape." And I was like, "Well, you keep telling this as if it's a normal thing." She said, "Yeah, but except for you, it was quite apparent that she was going down quite badly for a while now. And
Hmm.
one could see that the fire in her eyes or whatever, that, the life force that keeps one going,
Hmm.
was diminishing a bit." And she
Hmm.
said it very matter of factly. And
Hmm.
she also
Hmm.
talks about, "Oh, I miss her," or she's not very overtly sentimental about it. And but it's very mature of her to talk in this manner.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's surprising that you bring it up. Why I have given this example in so much detail is because I thought a lot of people in the audience may not gauge the uh, the depth of what you're bringing out, because it had no
Hmm.
example. You were mentioning a fact. So my question to you:
Yeah.
when does when is it good time to accept one's vulnerability so much that you are able to share it with somebody else? Not in terms of that they have to go through it, but in terms of the honesty that one has to bring to it. So, for example, I'll bring it down to a very basic thing. So, you and I work together sometimes. So,
Hmm.
if you got a client and we were working, and at that point I'm unable to crack an idea. It's a fairly simple thing. It happens to creatives all the time. You're unable to
Hmm.
do it, but I would not come and tell you that, look, I'm unable to do it because I'm in so and so frame of mind, or I'm unable to crack it because
Hmm.
of my lack of
Hmm.
capability today, or whatever. So, where in a scenario like this can an adult, since you brought it about to
Hmm.
say, is it okay to bring your vulnerability? And if you think it is easy, then why is it easy? Because you did mention it casually in that sense, that I thought I'll be honest. It's not that easy.
See, there are a lot of difficult things in raising a family, you know, a lot of difficult things in living with the village. What is not difficult is honesty. Okay. And I'm not speaking about honesty in the context of, let's say, I should not lie to my mother if I don't get permission for a party, but I still want to go to that party. Go ahead, lie. If you can get away with it, just go ahead and do it. Those are the small things. It's the experience of growing up. That's that. For example, you're not able to meet a certain deadline, you can lie, and without impacting the person who is got the deadline or the business or whatever it is. It's a small thing. Lie, get away with it. I have no problems in that context either. But I think the bigger things in life, like for example, if our life situation is changing, if there are big stresses that are, for example, there are money problems that are impacting what you can and cannot provide to your family. Or, for example, there are mental health problems and there are physical health problems, or there are social peer pressure problems. These are not things you can actually hide. These are just too big. The impact of it is very widely felt. It's just simply better to be honest about it. It's what you can do. It is quite, I mean, okay, the reason why it's easy is because I tried it the other way and it just doesn't work. You fail miserably all the time on that one. And it makes just relationships difficult, it makes conversations difficult, it pushes away, it creates distance in relationships, it creates distance with people you love, it creates misunderstandings. It I mean, all of it can just be let go if you about these larger things. Just go ahead and share the truth and let the chips fall where they may. And one is always surprised that people are able to take it better when faced with the truth about these larger things. And the smaller lies, everybody is willing to let go. It's a truth. I mean, we are not beings who don't lie. I mean, everybody lies. I mean, animals lie. If you're interacting with five other beings, living things, you lie because I mean, you want certain things. You either want affection, you want food, you want something extra, whatever it is you want, and you want to get away, you want to be mischievous, whatever. you know it's fine. Those are the small things, but the larger things, like for example, in the forest, there is a forest fire. Now you can't lie your way out of it. There is a drought. You can't lie your way out of it. Winter's coming. The ice is going to come in very soon. What can you do? You can't lie, right? It's just there in front of you. All the lies you say is going to fall like a ton of bricks very soon. So it's simply better to say the truth. You can at least navigate more easily through the challenges.